Operator logic. I want you to picture this. An owner tells you sales were there. Deposits hit the bank. Production ran. Customers got their signs. Then the owner pulls a report, and there it is, one archive capture entry, circled in red on the work log. The baffling part, it's marked captured, so everyone assumed it was harmless. But the cash math says otherwise. Not lost inventory, not a refund, one process mismatch, traced back to a single archived capture event. And here's the question that matters. What if that archived capture looked harmless, but it was the reason the money didn't show up? What would you check first? Let's make this real. A sign shop's day is a chain. Quote gets written, proof gets approved, production gets scheduled, materials get consumed, the installer completes the job, then billing happens, the invoice gets sent, and the closeout gets filed. Only after that does cash reconciliation have something solid to match. Most shops use multiple systems, an estimating tool, a proof approval record, a production tracker, maybe a field install ticket, and then an invoicing workflow. The archive/capture system usually sits in the middle, where it stores images, documents, and status events. When it works, it quietly links the chain together. When it drifts, it breaks the chain. The claim is simple. One archive capture created a revenue cost mismatch. No fraud, just process drift and missing reconciliation. That archive capture wasn't stealing. It was doing something worse from a bookkeeping perspective. It attached to the wrong job context, at the wrong time, or with the right timestamp, but the wrong status. So the business still completed the job, but the finance side didn't get it clean. This job is ready to bill and close. In other words, money existed in the workflow, but not in the ledger. Let me walk you through the paper trail the owner pulled, because this is where the blind spot hides. First, the quote. You see the job number, the customer name, and the agreed scope. Second, proof approval. There's a proof sign-off note. Sometimes it's a screenshot, sometimes it's a signature line. Third, production notes. The shop logs material usage and cutting printing runs. Fourth, install ticket. The installer checks it off when it's mounted, and the customer signs the completion. Fifth, invoice. This is where the scope becomes dollars. The archive capture was supposed to link those documents using one consistent job ID, but one archived capture entry appeared, captured from an earlier proof screen or a reprint, and it got mislinked to the later install job record. The documents looked close enough, so production kept moving and finance kept waiting. Now the cash math. This is where operators stop guessing. On the whiteboard, the owner wrote 3 numbers, expected gross margin from the contract. Say the invoice should have been $12,000 total, with materials and subcontracting expected at $3,600. That means expected gross profit of $8,400. Actual collected cash, the shop deposited $9,000 from that customer over the same period. Payments can be partial, sure, but here's the key. The invoice ledger showed the invoice was never fully billed, or was billed at a mismatched amount because one scope line never tied to the install closeout. So the mismatch isn't mystery theft. It's missing billing evidence. When the archive capture didn't reach billing, the system didn't authorize final invoicing for the scope. Let's list the 3 ways an archive capture can cause this. 1. Duplicated. Someone captured an event twice, first during proof, then again during install, and the system kept the earlier one when the invoice job was created. 2. Misdated. The capture timestamp landed after production finished, but before the install ticket status updated. So the billing automation treated it as not ready. 3. Mislinked. The archive capture was attached to the wrong job ID, or attached to the right job ID but the wrong version of the job, like a reprint job that was later merged. Result? Either A. Unbilled work, B. Billed the wrong amount, or C. Work redone while the original wasn't closed. In the sign shop we're using as the example, production looked fine. Screenshots showed the job progressing. The installer's notes were there, customer approvals were there, so why didn't the money show up? Because the leak lived in reconciliation timing, captured a billing to close out. The archive capture system is often treated like a storage layer, but if your billing step depends on that layer being complete and correctly linked, then storage becomes a gate. If the archive capture arrives with the wrong status flag, billing waits, skips, or creates an incomplete invoice. Then the shop closes the job in production, but doesn't reconcile the archive capture as a missing trigger for the invoice closeout. That's how one harmless-looking capture becomes a money problem. Now, here's the operator checklist. What you check first if you suspect an archive capture mismatch. Check 1. Job closeout status. For the jobs you think should have been profitable, are they actually marked closed for billing? Not installed, not completed in production, closed for finance. Check 2. Matching IDs between archive capture and invoice line items. Open the invoice, grab the job number and scope lines, then find the archive capture entry that should support those lines. If the job ID doesn't match exactly, or scope line codes don't match, you found the gap. Check 3. Capture timestamp versus install completion. Ask, did the archive capture land after install ticket completion and after customer proof approval, or did it land too early or too late relative to status transitions? Those 3 checks take minutes, and they're the fastest path to clarity. So what's the fix? Don't overhaul everything. Use the simplest system change that removes ambiguity. First, one source of truth job ID. Every document, quote, proof, production notes, install ticket, archive capture, and invoice line items must reference the same job ID format. No close enough. No version A versus version B. Second, mandatory closeout form. No finance closeout without confirming 3 things. Install complete, proof accepted, and capture link verified. Third, an exception report. Generate a list of archive captures that never reached billing within a defined time window, like 48 hours after install. That exception report turns silent drift into a visible queue. In the case we're describing, once the owner added the exception report and corrected the job ID mapping rules, the missing scope started getting billed automatically, and reconciliation stopped depending on someone's memory. Here's the blunt reminder. The fastest way to protect profit is not to audit your creative process. Audit the handoff, capture to bill to cash. Because when archive capture is treated as harmless storage, it can quietly become the control point where money either arrives or doesn't. If you want, pause your reporting right now and pick one recent profitable job. Follow the chain from proof approval to install ticket to invoice. Then verify that every archive capture that supports it is linked to the correct job ID and timestamp. That single walkthrough is how you find your own red circled blind spot before it costs you.